or not. I heard a click. Then I heard him say, "What the?" I used that moment of shock and surprise on his part to break free from a malfunctioning gun. But it should have been saved by background checks. See, this man had bought 2 firearms without getting a background check. One was purchased online, and his handgun, which you need to have a gun put to your head to know that our real national emergency is violence. Every day, 100. Today, nearly a quarter of Americans who obtain a firearm do so without having a background check. Here in Nevada, we've blocked 200 domestic abusers. On Friday, the Nevada State Senate, they updated background checks to include all gun sales, closing the gun show loophole. And then Governor Sisson signed it into law. This was a long time coming. The state legislature for righting this wrong and making sure the will of the people has been carried out. But guys, we are only one state. There are 18 states that don't require background checks on all gun sales, even though poll after poll after poll shows that 90% of all voters support them. This is why they're so important. H.R. 8 would update background checks for all gun sales in the United States, not just requiring them. I know that we will be able to count on Elizabeth Warren's support. She has pledged that she will not take a dime from the NRA, so they can't shut her up. In addition to supporting background checks, the senator has co-sponsored many bills on gun violence and a strong supporter of survivors. Today, stage in front of my bed last night, she asked, "When I run for president, will you vote for me?" When I run. She knows she can reach for the stars because she has women that have shown her the impossible is possible. Women like Senator Warren. Senator Warren is a role model. She is a powerhouse. She is a force to be reckoned with. Because of her perseverance and commitment to making sure everyone's voice is heard. Everyone's voice is heard. And she gave us the battle cry. Nevertheless, she persisted. Now, it is my honor to introduce Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Let me just start by saying how terrific it is to be with the people who turned Nevada red to blue. And better yet, who proved that elections matter, that we can get things done, and that we're going to have reasonable background checks right here in Nevada. Congratulations. Lisa, thank you for your work, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you. Really appreciate it. So, it really is exciting. Nevada's an exciting place right now because you show the rest of the nation what our future can look like. Folks who get out there and who fight, who make it happen face to face, house to house, all across the state. That's what we got to do across the nation. And then prove that it matters once the election is over and we get a government that represents the will of the people. So thank you. Thank you. So I thought what I'd do today is I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and talk about what brings me here, what brings me into this fight. And then we'll just take as many questions as we can. And if anybody wants to stay and do a picture afterwards, I'll stay here for as long as anybody wants to do pictures. Pictures are the fun part, right? Wait, yeah, I already see. I got people down here saying, I'm ready, I'm ready. Okay. All right, so let's do this. So I grew up out in Oklahoma. I have three much older brothers. I am what used to be referred to as a late in life baby. My mother always just called me the surprise. Yeah, I was about 30 before it hit me what that meant. But I have three older brothers. They all headed off and joined the military. My oldest brother, Don Reed, career military, 288 combat missions in Vietnam. We were lucky to have him back. Lucky to get him back. My brother John was stationed in Morocco for a long time. And my brother David, he trained as a combat medic. Now, he never actually was in combat, but he trained as a combat medic. They all live back in Oklahoma now, and I just want to warn you, if you ever meet my brother David, do not choke. He is convinced to this day that he could perform a tracheotomy with his pocket knife. And he is perpetually ready. So you can imagine what Thanksgiving is like. Anybody starts to, we all just get out of the room fast. So when I was growing up, and my brothers and I were growing up, our daddy sold a lot of stuff. He sold fencing, he sold carpeting, he sold paint, he sold hardware. About the time I was in middle school, all three of my brothers are gone. My daddy had a heart attack, and my mother and I thought he was going to die. He made it through, but when he got home, he couldn't go back to work for a long time. And we lost the family station wagon. And at night, my mama would tuck me into bed, and she would leave the room, and I would hear them. And this is when I learned words like mortgage and foreclosure. And one day, I walk into my parents' bedroom, and laid out on the bed is the dress. Some of you in this room will know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And it's laying there on the bed, and my mother is walking back and forth, and she's in her slip and her stockings, and she's saying, "We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house." She was 50 years old. She had never had a job outside the home, and she was terrified. And finally, she looked down at that dress. She picked it up, she wrestled it on, pulled on her high heels, blew her nose, and she walked to the Sears, and she got a minimum wage job. And that minimum wage job saved our house, and it saved our family. So, if you want to know who I am, there's the story. This is what's written on my heart. And for many, many years, I used to think this is a story just about my mother. It's about how hard she reached down, even when you're scared, and you do what has to be done to take care of the people you love. And then I got a little older, and I learned it's the story of millions of people across this country who, even when they're scared, even when it's tough, reach down as hard as it takes to do what needs to be done to take care of the people they love. But it was only years after that that I came to understand it's also a story about government. It's a story about government because when my mama walked to the Sears and got a minimum wage job in America would support a family of three. Today, a minimum wage full-time job in America will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and it's why I'm in this fight. So think about that difference. Why is it so different? And the answer is because of decisions made in far-off Washington. So back when I was a kid, the question that people in Congress asked themselves was, what does it take a family of three? Go back and look. They talked about a family of three to get a foothold in the middle class, to get their chance, to get their ability to get in there and try to start building something with their lives. And that's what it did. Covered the mortgage, covered the utilities, and put food on the table. Today, the question that is asked in Washington whenever the minimum wage comes up is, what improves the profitability of giant multinational corporations? Well, I want a government that works for little families, not just for big corporations. Yep. And that's why I'm here. So, I had a dream. I did. My dream, I'll tell you my dream. I wanted to be a public school teacher. I've wanted to do this since I was in second grade. Can we hear it for our public school teachers? Yeah. And for me, it was a kind of long and twisty story about going off to college, got a scholarship, then I fell in love. Dropped out of school and got married to husband number one. Then my second chance was a commuter college that cost $50 a semester, and that's how it is. I got a 4-year college diploma. I started out as a special needs teacher. It is a calling. I love that work. And I probably would have done it forever, but when I was visibly pregnant, I was not invited back. I was home with a little baby, and I made this crazy decision to go off to law school. So I head off to a state school, 450, head to law school, but very quickly go right back into teaching. It's just where I am, that's who I am. And I've spent pretty much my whole grown-up life looking at one central question, and that is, what's happening to working families in America? People who work every bit as hard as my mama worked, every bit as hard as my father worked, and yet find the path today rockier and steeper than ever. And for people of color, the path is even rockier and even steeper. America isn't working for working families any longer, and that's so this is the fundamental question. What country has continued to get richer? Look at the GDP, look at the stock market. I'll tell you what's gone wrong. It's Washington, exactly what it is. Washington works great for giant drug companies. It just doesn't work for people who are trying to get prescriptions filled. That's the problem we've got. And we can just keep multiplying this. Washington works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere. It just doesn't work for people who see climate change headed our way and about to roll over us. Washington works great for investors in private prisons. It just doesn't work for people whose lives are destroyed and whose communities are torn apart. Think about it this way. Washington works great for those with money and power. It works great for those who can hire an army of lobbyists and lawyers. When we have a government that only works for the rich and the powerful, that is corruption plain, we gotta call it out. It's corruption and it touches every single family in this country. I just give you a couple of pieces. I could do this part all day, but I'll just give you a couple. Since the 1970s, country keeps getting richer. Wages in this country, adjusted for inflation, are basically flat. And yet, cost of housing has gone up 2/3. Cost of your health insurance premiums, more than doubled. Cost of sending a kid to school, more than tripled. And today in America, 40% of Americans could not find $400 to cover an emergency. Think about that. Transmission falls out of the car and their lives are just turned upside down. Let me give you one more. Homeownership. Homeownership. Number one way in America that families build wealth, right? Buy a house and it's an appreciating asset. Buy the house and live in it until you retire and live on your Social Security. You got a house that's paid for. Want to take out a loan for a small business, having a house as collateral. And that you are lucky enough that grandma and grandpa can hang on to that house until they pass on. That means there's wealth for the next generation. And that's how generation after generation of working families in this country have accumulated wealth. So it is no surprise that the US government has taken the way back of subsidizing the purchase of homes for white people. But for African Americans, redlined and said, we're going to subsidize mortgages over in these neighborhoods, make it almost impossible to get mortgages over in these neighborhoods. Now, I just want to remind everybody in this arena, that was legal in America and enforced law into the 1960s. So in 1960, when that was still legal, there was a big gap between white homeownership and black homeownership. It's about 27 percentage points difference between them, right? Big gap, and big wealth gap, and big generational consequences of that, right? But then the civil rights movement, we outlawed it. And by golly, the wealth gap began to close. More African Americans, more Latinos, more people who'd been shut out of the housing market had a chance to get into the housing market. So it begins to close, and more people are buying houses, everybody. So the whole thing's going up. Then what happens? Our federal government starts watching out, not for families, but for giant financial institutions. Giant financial institutions that figured out they could rake in profits beyond their wildest dreams by selling a bunch of lying, cheating mortgages. And they started out by targeting communities of color, and they nearly destroyed them. Now, ultimately, they spread that all around. I come to Clark County today to say I was here during the crash back in 2008, 2009, held hearings here about what had happened. Listened to the testimony as people stood up and talked about the homes that they had bought, that they had invested in. I will never forget Mr. Estrada. Right there at UNLV, we had an auditorium. People came in to be able to testify about the housing crash, and he talked about the proud day when he had bought this home with his wife. They both had good jobs. They had these two little girls, and their school was right across the street. And he talked about what it was like to be able to stand in his driveway and watch these little girls walk across the street to their school. Only there was something funny about that mortgage that he found out when the price shot up, the mortgage payment shot up at exactly the same time that he lost his job. So everything falls apart, it all breaks out. And he stood there and talked about what it would mean to lose his home and what it would mean to have to say to his two little girls, he talked about one of his little daughters came home from school with a list of the names of her friends. And she said to her dad that she wanted him to keep this because when they had to leave their home, she didn't want to forget who her friends were. That's the effect of losing home. This isn't just, it's dollars, but it's lives. And our federal government thought it was more important to protect big financial institutions than to protect families like Mr. Estrada's. Ultimately, millions of people across this country lost their homes, millions lost their savings, millions lost their jobs in that downturn. And you better believe, one reason I am in this fight is we can never let this happen again. Never. But I want to do one more point about the fallout from that. Because those big banks, having targeted communities of color, guess where we stand today in that gap between white home ownership and black home ownership? Remember, it was 27 points back in 1960 when housing discrimination was legal. Today, it's 30 percentage points. That's where America stands today. And that means, as a nation, we need to say out loud, race matters, and we have to be willing to call it out when financial institutions or anyone else is making decisions based on race and harming people across this country. We have to be willing to do this. So look, the impact of having an America that works for those at the top and isn't working for families, it's felt all around this country. It's felt by women and has been for a long time. LGBTQ Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, people with disabilities, over and over and over. People who get shut out of the process. But this is our chance in a democracy to turn this around. This is our chance to make America work, not just for a thin slice at the top, but to make it work for all of us. So here's what I want to pitch you on. Here's what I want to enlist you in. Here's what I want to see if I can get you engaged in. Let's see if we can do this. We have the power. This is a democracy. We have the power, and we have the power not just to make a little change, not just one statute here or a policy over there or a little bit better person running an agency over here. We have the power to make big structural change in this country, and that's what I'm in this for. Big change. Big change. Big change. So let me talk to you about what I think big change is all about. Changing the rules, changing the operation. Because if you change the rules, if you change the operation, then you've got it. All right, so let's start. Change the rules in Washington. Start with the fact that the Trump administration is the most corrupt administration in living memory. But we've had problems in Washington for a long, long time. So how about some structural change? I have the biggest anti-corruption bill since Watergate. And boy, is this a time when we need it. It's got a lot of pieces to it. Let me just give you some of those pieces. End lobbying as we know it. Stop the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. Yep. Make the United States Supreme Court follow basic ethics rules. Okay, I gotta do one more. Just one more. And anybody who wants to run for federal office has to put their tax returns online. Everybody does it. We make that Washington operates differently. Money is different in Washington. Okay, that's part one. Part two, we got to change this economy. We got to change the rules in this economy. And let me start again structurally, because that's how we have to think about this. Problem we've got right now is that giant corporations just have too much power. And there's nobody who'll push back. So they just roll wherever they want to roll. And if they want to roll over you, they just go ahead and do it. That's the problem we've got right now. So how do you fix that structurally? Well, I'll tell you part of it is you've got to have some more power on the field. And that means we need to get more power into the hands of workers. That means make it easier to join a union. Unions built America's middle class. Unions will rebuild America's middle class. We want to make change. We get strong unions. And we want to make change. We got to go right to the heart of the things that turn working families upside down. That means we start with the fact that health care is a basic human right. Nobody should go bankrupt over health care. We support Medicare for all. We believe in health care. Let me do another one. And that is, I believe in universal child care and early preschool. 0 to 5 at investment. Yep. And one more. Nobody should get crushed by debt trying to get an education. Let's bring down the student loan debt burden. All right, I got one more. We really do, because we need to do these things. We need to make more investment in affordable housing. Everybody is entitled to a decent place to live, and particularly seniors, people with disabilities, low-income folks, working families. These are investments we can make together. And if we're talking about the economy, you look at me and say, yeah, you come here and you promise all this stuff, this is great investments. How are you going to pay for it? And the answer is, oh, I got a plan. I got a plan. Let me tell you about this plan. This plan is the Ultra Millionaires Wealth Tax. All you got to do, just listen to this. If we put a 2% tax on the wealth of people who have more than $50 million in assets, they can keep their first $50 million just totally free. I know that makes a lot of you feel more relaxed. Right? It's okay. Yeah, okay. Nobody had to get up and stomp off on this one. All right. By the way, when I announced this a couple of weeks ago, did you see the billionaires? It was like, whoa, not bad. Are you kidding me? That's not American. How do you do something like that? But just a 2% tax. And we have the money to be able to pay for childcare, for 0 to 5, for early education, to bring down student loan debt, to make the investments in infrastructure, in jobs right here in America. This is about everybody pays a fair share and everybody gets opportunity to build a real future. That's what it's about. All right, so that's 2. All right, change the rules in Washington, change the rules in the economy. The third one, change the rules in politics. And here's where we start. We start by protecting our democracy. I'm strong for a constitutional amendment to protect the right to vote and to make sure that every vote gets counted. Every vote. We need to roll back every one of these voter suppression rules. Yes, the gerrymandering, every part of it. That's how we make our democracy strong. Oh, and let me throw in one more on this. Repeal Citizens United. Democracy is not for sale. That's right. That's it. Think about it. It's three kinds of change. Get rid of the corruption, address it head on, change the rules in this economy, protect our democracy, change those rules in politics. We do that, we have a fundamentally different. And here's the pitch I want to make on that. Whatever issue brought you here today, think about what it would mean if we had a government that instead of working for the lobbyists, instead of working for a handful of billionaires, instead of kowtowing to the giant corporations and their executives, instead worked for the people, everything we care about would be different. So if you're here today for gun safety, then you care about a government that represents the will of the people. Because we need background checks, not just in Nevada, we need them all over this country. If you're here today because you care about comprehensive immigration reform, about protecting our dreamers, about TPS, about a path to citizenship, then you care about a government that represents the values of the people. If you're here because you care about student loans, then you care about a government that is responsive to the people. And we could keep going through this. Net neutrality. Yeah, I got some over there, yeah. A Green New Deal. Every piece of what we want to do intersects with policies in Washington that today a handful of the rich and powerful, the folks who've got money, are calling the shots. And the only way we're going to change that is we're going to change it together. Yeah. So that's how I see that. So let me just say this. Not in a million years did I ever think I would run for any public office. Not senator, not president. No part of this. But you get to the moment. My daddy ended up as a janitor. Had a chance to become a public school teacher, to become a college professor, to become a United States senator, and to become a candidate for president of the United States. I'm here out of gratitude. I've lived opportunity. I've lived it, and I know the difference between when you've really got a chance and when you've only got a pretend chance. I've lived it, and I'm committed to the fact that we can build the structures so that every kid in this country, not just the kids born to rich people, but every kid in this country can have real opportunity. This is a tough time in America. It's a dangerous moment. We watch the headlines every day, but it is also a moment of great opportunity. We have truly come to this point where we're going to make a choice about what kind of a nation we are and what kind of a people we are. And I say, don't spend this on little pieces here and there. Spend this on big structural change. Spend this on the kind of difference that will matter to our children and our grandchildren. I say this is the moment to dream big, to fight hard, and to win. So thank you. Thank you. You guys are terrific. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. You all want to do some questions? Where's Michelle? Here she is. Here's Michelle. She's our state director for Nevada. Say hello. All right. Hello. So Michelle's going to run the questions here. Okay, have at it, Michelle.
Great. I'm so excited. How are you guys? Yeah, me too. This is a great crowd. Okay, so I'm going to count out 3 tickets. And so everybody should have gotten a ticket when you walked in
Y'all got a ticket.
with a number on it. So I'm going to call out 3 tickets. And if that's your number, you're going to come to one of the mics, either on this side over here by the stage or on this side over here by the stage, and bring your ticket up. So, all right, here we go. Lucky first ticket. 24-10732. 24-10732.
0732. Last part. Probably matters. Do we have a winner?
Okay, we're gonna do another one.
You call it.
0729. 0729. Gonna do another one. 0727.
Oh wait, we got a 0729. All right. Okay. A couple more so they can be covered.
0727.
0726.
0726.
We got another one.
Nice.
All right.
Okay, come on
Okay.
down. Great. 0725. All right. He was ready.
Fabulous. Okay, good. The whole idea is let's just make sure everybody's got an equal chance to do this.
Great,
So,
great.
good.
Okay,
Fabulous.
we're gonna call one more, and then we'll start with the folks who are in line.
Okay.
Okay, 0648.
We have 0648.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
I think
Okay.
we're ready to go.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. Tell me your name.
Us too. So my name is Petra. I live here in Nevada.
Hi,
and
Petra.
I'm interested in knowing, I'm concerned about the Title X gag rule that's in the works right now, basically, with Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And I want to know what actionable steps are you planning to take to protect Planned Parenthood?
Okay. So let me start by saying thank you for the question. I've been in the United States Senate for 1 term. I ran back in 2012. And we have been in a fight every single time we're in session over Republicans trying to take away funding from Planned. I mean, I just want everybody to know that. This is not special to just the last hour and a half, or they've picked one particular part. And I understand from everybody else there, it's been going on even longer than that. But I've witnessed it firsthand, and I just want to make sure everybody knows the basics here. Planned Parenthood is basic health care for a couple of million women across this country. And actually, a few tens of thousands of men as well get their health care at Planned Parenthood. And it's a lot of different kinds of coverage that people get at Planned Parenthood. You take away funding from Planned Parenthood, you take away access to basic health care services for millions of women in this country. That's what's at stake here. And I also want to be clear, there are no federal dollars used at Planned Parenthood for abortions. That's just the law right now. So this is about health care coverage for women. And the Republicans just keep looking for one way after another. They do it through the courts, they do it through state legislatures, and now they keep trying to make runs through, trying to do this through the House and the Senate. So this part I can tell you, they will not get any bill through Congress that cuts into funding for Planned Parenthood. It's just not going to happen. This is one we'll fight them every step of the way. Okay? Good. I promise you on that one. But if I can I use this one just because it's such a good question to talk about one more thing just for a minute about healthcare, because we don't do this enough. We kind of go straight into the weeds on what's happening on healthcare. And you're right to talk about Title X. They're trying to cut off the ability to talk about options that women may face in a pregnancy. But I want to just make this one a little bit bigger because I think we don't talk about our values enough. I was in the Senate a year ago last summer, when I watched the House of Representatives, and I watched as every single Republican voted to roll back health care coverage for tens of millions of Americans, and then high-fived each other. I just want you to think about that. Who does that? Who says, got rid of health care coverage for those folks, right? And then high-fived each other. And I was there when we hung on by a single vote in the United States Senate and kept that from happening. But there was a piece of it that in that debate, we needed to push further forward. And that is not just the Affordable Care Act, but also Medicaid. You know, a lot of folks think Medicaid is somebody else. Medicaid is us. 2 out of every 3 seniors in a nursing home is counting on Medicaid to be able to pay those bills at the nursing home. Your neighbor who needs a home health aide, counting on Medicaid to get that person in. Your friend who has a problem with an opioid addiction, it's Medicaid, most likely, that will pay for the services when your friend is ready to get healthy. And that baby your niece had that ran up $1 million in the first month, you had the parents had good health care coverage. It's Medicaid. It's going to be that baby's therapists, that baby's occupational therapist and speech therapist, and the feeding tubes and the special equipment. That's Medicaid. And this is the America. We don't know whose grandma outlives her savings. We don't know whose friend gets hit by a bus. And we don't know whose niece has the baby that runs up $1 million in medical care in the first few weeks. But here's what we do now. As human beings who care about each other, we all pitch in some nickels so that if it happens to you, or if it happens to you, or if it happens to me, that we're going to be there for each other. Medicaid is one of the best parts of our country and says that we are the kind of people who believe in each other. So, health care for everyone. Thank you. Good. Who else has got a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lois. I'm a resident of Nevada. I want
Hi,
to thank
Lois.
you for your support of the Green New Deal.
Yes.
My question is, what next steps to get it implemented, and what do you need from us?
Okay, good. So, we got somebody who's ready on Green New Deal. All right, so let's start. I want to start this by saying something really controversial. When I'm in Washington, it's a problem, and you have to kind of be careful about where you do this, but here I am in Nevada. I'm with a bunch of good folks. I'm just going to take a risk here. Anybody who's standing up, may want to steady yourself on this, because what I'm about to say is pretty shocking. I believe in science. Change is real. It is caused by human beings, and we are fast running out of time to make the changes we need to make to save this earth. So that's where we start. And here is the terrific part. Green New Deal is a way that people are now getting organized, and they're behind it. So what can you do? You keep pushing on it, right? Keep pushing on it. The basic idea, and right now it's a set of principles, because it isn't starting with a little piece. You know, I've heard the poo-pooing that, well, it's only a set of principles. Yeah, because it's big and it's important and it's going to have a lot of pieces to it. So let's talk just about some of the pieces that are going to be in there. I'll tell you, one of the pieces that's going to be in there is we stop subsidizing fossil fuel companies and we put that money into green energy. That's going to be part of it. Yeah. This is crazy, right? That we have to keep working on this. The whole idea behind the Green New Deal is we look for every place we're going to have to make change. Let me do another one. It's going to be critically important to harden our infrastructure against coming climate change. It's just going to be a critical part of what we've got to do. We've got to rebuild our infrastructure for 21st century and for better resilience. Yeah. I'll get wonky for a minute. We're going to do more distributed generation, right? And net metering. I'm into every part of this. But that's the kind of thing we're going to have to make changes there. We're going to make changes as a country in conservation, of protecting our lands, of protecting our federal lands. Oh, can I also say no offshore drilling? And one more piece. We got to put real money into the research that we need for where the best place to make these investments in clean energy going forward are, and to bring down the carbon that's already in the atmosphere. So I started with I believe in science. I will wrap it back around to I believe in science. So it's going to be a lot of pieces, and it's going to be a big and noisy debate over the next couple of years as we get through this. But it can't be, and we're going to have to start passing it in pieces, because this is the part that really has me worried. We're running out of runway on this one. It's bearing down on us. And every time we get more data from the scientists, they say, remember how bad I told you it was? It's worse than that. And we keep finding more and more evidence of an accelerating problem. So I see this as a problem, a science problem, a problem we've got to fix, but also a moral problem. We cannot be a people who destroy the earth before our children have a chance to live their lives and our grandchildren have a chance to live their lives. So I'm in all the way. It's going to have a lot of pieces to it, but I'm glad to hear that you're in it too. So thank you very much. Yes. Good. Who else we got? Oh, we got one over here. Good.
Hi, my name is Ray.
Hi, Ray.
I love your views so far on income inequality, all inequalities, but my main question is a little bit possibly, I'm in the middle, I'm not Democrat.
Okay.
But I want to know how you feel about basic universal income and maybe choosing a running mate, vice president, like Andrew Yang, who's a Democrat, who uses that as his platform issue, or maybe even a righty, which would be old school American politics, where the vice president strongly disagrees with you. Charles Murray also looks in this issue. Basic universal income.
I was with you for a while now. And then I got out of the boat. Okay. So let me start with universal basic income. It's a debate right now, and people are starting. It's a good debate. It's a thing to put on the table and to start to talk about. I'm a co-sponsor with Cory Booker on an experiment. Yep. And it's an experiment. It says, how about if we invest, we try it in the community, and we just kind of see what the consequences are? Because it would be a big change. And so I believe in a government where we try some things that we're not sure if they'll. When we figure out, we watch, we test, we see what the consequences are. But I want to make a second point about universal basic income. And that is, there is so much we need to do before we get to that fight. In America right now, can I just go back to my wealth tax for just a sec when we're talking about inequality? Right now, the top 1/10 of 1%, that's the basically 75,000 richest families in America. You all can identify yourselves right now. The top 1/10 of 1% this year will pay all in taxes the equivalent of about 3.2% of their total wealth. Okay. The 99.9% of America, is that any of you? The 99.9% of America will pay all in about 7.2% of your wealth in taxes this year. So just right off the top, I want to get a little equality in who pitches in to keep this country running. I am tired of freeloader billionaires. I want to see everybody pay a fair share. That's all you're asking for. That's all I'm asking for. Just pay a fair share. And if we do pay a fair share, the money is there. And the money is there for child care, for early education, for investing in our schools, for investing in our young people, for investing in housing, for investing in bringing down the cost of college and student loans, for making a down payment on a really big Green New Deal. The money is there in creating the infrastructure right here in America. We get those 21st century jobs because our people and our infrastructure is top notch. You give us both of those, we can compete with anybody in the world. So I want to see us do those things because they're right there in front of us. And the only reason we don't do them is not because America doesn't want us to. Go out and poll this stuff. Take a look at it. America wants us to do it. It's a bunch of politicians who have sold out to giant corporations, to billionaires, and who aren't working for you anymore. And that's what we've got to change. So that's where I am on tonight. Thank you. Good.
Hi, my name is Heather. We've heard about your Green New Deal in school and early childhood education. What is some of your plans to tackle immigration and the problems that are inherent with that?
Okay, so very much for the question. On immigration, again, kind of like, I think we start on everything. You start with the statement of what your values are. Then you know where the center is. You know what it is you're aiming for. Immigration does not make our country weaker. Immigration makes our country stronger. And it does that. I really, this is a part of what makes America strong, is that we aren't all the same. We come from a lot of different backgrounds. We approach problems differently. We have different kinds of family structures. We come at things differently, and that is not our weakness. It is our strength. So that's where we start. It also means we need an immigration system that does. An immigration system that strengthens our economy, and an immigration system that is consistent with our values. That's what we've got to be aiming for. So let me just fill in some blanks on part of that, okay? Let's talk about our values. I'm going to start there. But it's also important economically. We've got to protect our dreamers, and they must have a path to citizenship. We are not a country that breaks up families. Let's make that part clear. We need to protect people who are here on temporary protected status. People who are contributing to our economy, people who've built businesses here. This is good for all of us. This is the America we want. We've got to straighten out our visa system. It's a mess. And let's say it. Yes, we need border security, but we need border security that's about real threats, not about 12-year-old children. Right? I want to say one word about that. I went down to the border. It's been a while now. I went down and I just want you all to picture it. It was an Amazon warehouse is what it looked like. Only it was dirty and it smelled bad. And I walked in, and on the left were just cages packed with men. One cage after maybe 10 feet wide, maybe 40 feet deep, a toilet back in one corner, cage after cage. Were cages of women. And then you step through, and there were the cages of little girls. 12-year-old girls, 13-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls who hadn't seen their mothers. By the way, the people who are running the facility, our government officials told me these children, these little girls were not officially separated from their mothers because their mothers were over in those other cages. It's true. It's true. The immigration system that can't tell the difference in the threat posed by criminals, by terrorists, and by 12-year-old children needs to be reworked top to bottom. So that's where I am. Did that give you some outline? Okay, good. Thank you, Heather. Okay, we got some more questions. Can we do a few more before everybody freezes to death? I will say this. I know some people have gotten cold and had to go home, but the tough stay on.
No, those were awesome questions. And I think before we lose the rest of our sun, we want to have some good light for selfies.
All right. So let me say this. We're going to quit doing questions. And let me say this. As you're, and we'll do pictures. It is an honor to be here with you. It's an honor to be in this fight. And I know that what I'm talking about is hard. Because I'm talking about big change. And I'm talking about change. Let's just be blunt. People who have power do not give it up easily. People who've got money don't just say, you're right, that's not fair, so I'm going to fire all my lobbyists, right? Yeah, they did. There was a reason those billionaires said, wait, what? What did you have? That's a no, that's a non-starter. I get it about it being hard. I want to tell you something about that. When I was a law professor during this crash, I said, we can't be in America that ever lets giant financial institutions, again, make their profits by cheating the American people. So I came up with an idea for an agency. And you know what people told me? They said, you'll never get that done. And in fact, there was a reason for them to say that. Because the giant financial institutions spent more than $1 million a day for over a year to keep that agency from becoming law. But we got in that fight, we got organized, we persisted, and the Consumer Financial